Yo, what's up everyone? It's Joushi again, here to do some ramblings, this time about something that I've been calling the Chaos Knights test. But before I get into that, I do have a couple other things I want to talk about first. Firstly, if you're interested in finding all the winning guard lists, of course there's a link down in the Ko-fi description, down below in the description, blah blah blah. You know all that fun stuff. However, the other new thing, we have recently unlocked channel memberships. So thank you so much to, I'm gonna butcher these, Kasrkin, Hewu, and Zeph for already becoming members of the channel. I've already put out a way to come get into the Discord for free, and I'll have another opportunity to find that password later in this video. But if you are not in the Discord already, I want to make sure link your Discord and YouTube accounts to get access to it. There's a gear along the bottom of your Discord settings, and if you find the connection settings, you can connect them, and then there should just be a join button for the Discord there. We have a special members lounge, which I will start building out because the Discord is new, and I don't moderate Discords a whole lot. So anyway, moving on, the Chaos Knight test. So this is a pretty classic example of list building principles that you're going to be looking at when you're trying to build lists for competitive. Of course, if you're trying to play like more narrative or crusade games, build more thematic lists, right? It is more fun, it's more interesting that way for everybody involved. However, this is just an example of one kind of test that your list needs to pass in order to be competitively viable. And of course, it is also going to depend on what people in your area are playing. One of the hardest matchups for guard historically has been Necrons, and I've been lucky, unlucky in that there are like no Necron players in my area, so I don't really have to worry about that. It is very rare that I will pair into them, so I don't think about it a whole lot. However, there are a lot of Tau players, there's a lot of Sisters players, and there's a lot of Orc players in my area, so I need to be ready for those matchups pretty much all the time. Um, yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about why I'm making this video in the first place. I had somebody ask, so there was somebody on Reddit who was asking about a list, and it was a bunch of like Kasrkin and Scions and things, and my initial response was, I look at this list and I think this list just auto loses to any vehicle spam, and the Chaos Knights list is the most common like Wardog spam that you see. Sometimes you'll also see this with like Ironstorm back when that was powerful, but there are other variants of this that are going to be giving, Kasrkin and Science based list a lot of issues. So let's go ahead and talk about what the list is and why it's a problem for a lot of guard lists in general. So there is a meta list that is running around that is just 13 Wardogs. You bring 6 Carnivores, 6 Brigands, and 1 Stalker because you need a character to be your Warlord. And that's it. Like, that's the entire list. There are some small variations that you sometimes see where people will drop like a Brigand. Sometimes in order to bring Nurglings or a Beast of Nurgle. I've seen variations where they bring like Rodagus, or it's almost all Nurgle stuff now that I think about it. But you do sometimes see, 12 Wardogs instead of 13. But the 13 Wardogs is kind of what we're looking at right now. Um, why does this test matter? This list is one of the more common skew lists that you will see going into a lot of tournament things because it is relatively easy to build up. You just need 13 of the same model and you build them a little bit different. And this list is going to hit you fast and it's going to hit you really hard. You have carnivores that are moving 14 inches and they reroll charges, so you should expect that they should be hitting 9-inch charges on average rather than 7-inch charges on average. They also have access to an important stratagem called Knights of Shade, which for 1 CP, you can move them through enemy models and through walls freely. You can do that in both the movement phase and in the charge phase, and so in theory, you can just move really quickly around the map, and the terrain that normally stops a lot of vehicles from moving is nowhere near as much of an issue for Chaos Knights. The other major thing and why this is so important is because the Carnivore is moving so quickly, it has either 12 attacks that hit on 2s at Strength 8, AP2, Damage 1, which is going to kill... It's not going to quite kill most 10-man units. On average, you're going to kill 9-ish, 8 or 9, but you do have a possibility of just wiping any like 10-man Catachan unit. The other one is 6 attacks on 2s, Strength 12, AP3, Damage D6 plus 2. This has a reasonable chance of killing a Rogaldorn, right? But the biggest thing that we're looking at is anything that does not have an invul needs to be worried for its life because of how much damage the carnivores are going to be doing. And there are 6 of them, right? Most of these lists are bringing 6 of them. They are incredibly fast, they're fairly durable, and they hit incredibly hard when they get into combat. So, the test, there's 2 things that you're going to need to be doing in order to pass the Chaos Knights test. In general, the carnivores, when they come crashing into your lines, which will be turn 2, sometimes turn 3, you're going to be just get suddenly charged by 6 of these carnivores. And there are 2 things that you need to do in order to pass this test. The first one is you need to live, right? If you don't have, like, if you're just dead after that go turn, well, the game's over. So, what you're generally going to be looking for is chaff units or Bulgarian screens or, chimeras or whatever. You want something that the carnivores are going to have to hit on their go turn so that they aren't getting into your damage core. They aren't getting into your Lehman Russes. They aren't getting into your Rogel Dorns. They aren't getting into your artillery, whatever it is. Generally, you want at least 11 models in a unit to feel comfortable that the carnivores will not kill them in just the melee phase alone. Also remember that they have stubbers and they do have really good anti-chaff shooting from the brigands. So these guys do need to remain fairly hidden before they actually get jumped on. Okay, so you need some kind of screen. And you also need to understand how to screen. This video is not going to be talking about how to do that screening. That's an entirely separate topic that I could do at much greater length. But you need to have something that is going to prevent them from getting into your damage dealers. Second thing you need to be able to do is you need to kill them when they come in. Because if the carnivores get a second go turn, you lose. Right? That's just kind of the game. They're going to be putting a lot of pressure. They're going to be trying to do a lot. If you get charged by 6 carnivores a second time, you can't. Your screens are gone. They're now into your backline. They're now killing all of your tanks. You do not get a second chance.
So what do you want the password to be?
Kasrkin. And they have to spell it right.
If you just DM me the word Kasrkin, no further context, I'll send you an invite to the Discord.
Okay. There are, however, some things that we can exploit in order to make this test a little bit easier to pass. So the first thing is that Chaos Knights, they only have an invul in the shooting phase. They have a 5-up invul normally, and only one of them can use, we oftentimes call it rotate ion shields, but it's technically called diabolic bulwark in Chaos Knights, where you can give one of them a 4+ invul in the shooting phase. They do not have access to this in the fight phase. They also have a fairly poor base save for vehicles of a 3+. That's the same as a Rhino or a Chimera or a Devilfish, right? These are not particularly tough saves to chew through, and most real shooting from armies is going to be doing at least a little bit of damage, right? Even your classic guardsmen can get, like, they can sneak 2 wounds through the saves of a Wardog, and it just happens all the time. So you do have the ability to do a lot of chip damage to these guys. The other major thing is that we can generally deny cover, because when they charge in, if you can see the entire side of the model that you're shooting at, they don't get cover. And so unless they are wholly within a terrain piece, which is rather uncommon, we are putting them on this 3-up save by default. We are putting them on the 5-up save, 5-up invul pretty much automatically, and those are not very consistent. They also don't have a feel no pain like the Imperial Knight cousins. So these are things that we can try to exploit. So we need to start thinking about how we can pass the test. What does it look like to pass the test? In general, when 6 carnivores charge in, we need to kill at least 3 of them. At least 3 of them. And hopefully we can get 4 of them. Our real goal is 4, but if we don't kill 3, we've probably lost. So when I look at a list and say it doesn't have enough damage in general, this is usually my primary concern, right? I will look at a lot of lists. People will just, I just go on Reddit. I have a Discord. I have my Discord as well. Make sure you join it. And I also am part of another Discord where people are like posting lists all the time. And I will see that's like, oh, I've brought all this, all this chaff. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you play against Chaos Knights? As a rough rule of thumb, you're going to want about 1.5 Lehman Russes worth of damage per Wardog. Sometimes less, sometimes more. It's very loose, but you have to remember that we're an army that relies on redundancy. We are an army that relies on having multiple of the same thing because let's just say you're playing, you're shooting one Wardog with one Lehman Russ and you've just devoted that Lehman Russ to that. What if he just misses all of his shots, right? What if he only his last cannon goes through? What if your opponent just saves everything? We need to make sure we still have a volume in order to go through, and that's why, in general, about 1.5 Lehman Russes worth of damage per Wardog is what I'm looking at. So what you'll generally do, you'll set up Lehman Russes such as like, okay, this Lehman Russ can shoot that Wardog and that Wardog, and this Lehman Russ can shoot that Wardog and that Wardog. This one can only shoot here, right? But you want to make sure that you have the ability for your Lehman Russes to kind of pick and choose their targets. Okay. So let's talk about some of the common units that you can use to pass the Wardog test, or the Chaos Knight test, which is the title of the video. So, 10 Rough Riders is a pretty good tool. 10 Rough Riders on the charge will kill a Wardog 53% of the time without fixed bayonets and 70% of the time with fixed bayonets. Obviously, this is very swingy, right? You have to remember that doing d6 damage means that it can go up or down all the time. But if you're hitting on 2s and wounding on 4s, because it's strength 9 with Lance, they don't get a save off of that. So you're generally looking at about 4d6 worth of damage, and then a couple of extra damage as the horses try to kick their way through the armor of the Wardog. Other than that, a Lehman Russ battle tank will do about 9 wounds to a Wardog off an objective without take aim, but will just kill a Wardog about 57% of the time if it's on objective and you do have take aim. So, like I said, about 1.5 Lehman Russes is what you're going to want to commit, because if I'm looking at a situation, it's like, okay, a 60% chance to kill that Wardog, sometimes that's all I could get, so I'm going to take it. However, if I have to kill 3 or 4 of them, I'm not going to have one Lehman Russ shoots at one Wardog, one Lehman Russ shoots at another Wardog, 60%, 60%, 60%, because suddenly that becomes a ridiculously high chance of failure that I leave like 3 of them on like 2 wounds, and that is a disaster, because then they will get their second charge off. A Rogel Dorn kills a Wardog about 75% of the time with take aim. And that's pretty good, right? I would generally take that, but I would still hedge my bet a little bit, right? I would just devote one Rogel Dorn in, and then say, this one other guy, like I have a Lehman Russ that can shoot at it if I need to, but 75% is where I start getting a little bit more comfortable. Kasrkin, something we oftentimes saw. Kasrkin were generally pretty good into things like like Chaos Knights, just because they would spike mortal wounds really hard. You're generally looking at 2d3 for an average of 4 mortal wounds with a Melt-A-Mine, and then another 3 mortal wounds with a grenade. So 7 mortal wounds to a single target, and then with their shooting, with their Melt-A-Guns and stuff, you're going to be averaging 4 additional wounds. So one Kasrkin unit almost kills a single Wardog on average, but not quite. And sometimes you can charge and get that little bit of extra damage that you need. However, one of the premier damage pieces that we are bringing right now is a 15 brick of Scions, and you're seeing this all the time in competitive lists. However, a Scion brick, because it has to deep strike outside of 9, you're not getting the Melta 2 on all of their Melta guns. You are able to shoot them, but you're not getting the bonus damage. And so, kind of regardless, based on the map that I was looking at, regardless of whether or not the Wardog is on an objective, you're looking at an average of 6 to 7 wounds to a Wardog with a Scion brick. Obviously, this can spike. You can just kill it. Alternatively, it can do no damage, right? Like, it's just how it is. These are all averages. It's really important to note, this is not an exhaustive list of things, but these are some of the most common tools that you're going to be bringing. Demolishers and tank commanders will do some pretty decent damage, but they're also very swingy. Hellhounds, I mean, there's the Melta Hellhounds, which are kind of funny, but just kind of keep all that in mind. You have a lot of different tools. These are just some of the most common ones. Okay. So, with this in mind, we have to reverse engineer the solution in order to build a competitive list. And let's just say I'm going in, I want to kill 4 Wardogs. I need to bring enough damage to consistently say that I'm going to kill minimum 3 and hopefully 4 Wardogs. So, one easy example is, let's just say we take 2 Rogaldorns and 2 units of 10 Rough Riders. They each basically have about 70 to 75% chance to kill a Wardog each. That's pretty good. It's not bad. However, it is a little on the low side. I don't know if I would want to take just 2 Dorns and 2 Rough Riders as my entire damage core. I'd want a little bit more. So, let's throw in an Exterminator. And suddenly, we're passing the Wardog test. We have enough damage output, and now it's a matter of, getting cheap screens. What can we use to stand in front of our tanks in order to pass this test? Because that's the easy part, right? You just throw Bulgur and you throw some Catachan, you throw some Chimeras in there, and suddenly it's very difficult for the Knights to get where they're trying to go. Another easy example is if it takes about 1.5 Leman Russes to reliably kill a Wardog, 3 Leman Russes should reliably kill about 2 Wardogs. So, let's add 3 more Leman Russes. This is a really big part of the David Purcell school of thought, is if you just have 6 Leman Russes, you're passing the damage test. You're going to pass the damage test into almost anything in the game with this much firepower. So 3 Leman Russ battle tanks, 2 exterminators and a tank commander. That's what I brought to the last RTT. That's what David Purcell had a lot of success with previously. This isn't on the slide, but some of the other ways you can kind of go about it is, remember that the Wardogs do not have a invul save in melee. So one of the things that Paul Clifton of China has had a lot of success with, and we haven't really seen it take off elsewhere outside of China so far, is the Strachan Nork brick. If you have Colonel Strachan with Nork Deadog, a platoon command squad with as many chainswords as you can pack, or chainswords and power fists as you can pack in there, then you have 10 Catachan, like that thing almost kills Angron on the charge. It's going to kill a Wardog, right? You have the tools to come at it. Remember, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just how you need to be thinking about building up your list. The one last thought I'd put on this before we start talking about the closing of the video is, this is a big reason why I don't love indirect right now, is because it really just fails the Wardog test, like the Chaos Knight test, because they need to be direct firing in order to get lethal hits. Because if they're shooting indirect, they don't even need to rotate ion shields or diabolic bulwark. They don't even need to do that, because they're already going to be on the 4-up no matter what from Basilisks and Manticores. You need to be shooting them directly to get the lethal hits. You need to be shooting them directly in order to get the AP2 that are on both the Manticore and on the Basilisk, in order to even threaten to put them on the 5-up invul that they're already on. So it is definitely one spot where you have to be very careful, where if you're expecting to run into any of these vehicle skews, with Wardogs being one of the foremost among them, indirect fire just doesn't do as much. So with all that said, there are lots of tests. There are lots of Chaos Knight tests that we're kind of looking at. Other tests that we kind of need to be cognizant of is the Death Company test. Can we kill or neutralize a unit of 10 Death Company? Can we kill this one is less common now, but can we kill a 6 brick of Wardens, right? With the 4-up Field Note Bandit they give themselves for one phase. Can we kill 100 Orc Boys, right? These are all tests that you need to be aware of, that your army might need to pass. And it's going to depend a lot on your local meta. One of the things, here, I'll show you guys something that I have. So this is a spare tip. This is something that I do for my local games. So here is something that I have. This is tracking for Palm Springs. I keep track of everyone who's going, what they played, ITC rank, points per event, their stat check ELO, and then compare it to placings. Also, would you look at that? ELO is a slightly better indicator of where you're likely to place. Anyway, the more important part is, this is the faction breakdown that I saw at that event. And then this is the total player population according to stat check. So you can see that demons, not very popular in my local meta. I don't necessarily need to play around them very much. Necrons, really unpopular, 2.5%. We should be expecting nearly double this number at the average event, like globally. However, Sisters, super popular in my local meta. Ultramarines, fairly popular. What was the other one? Black Templars, there's a lot of them in my local meta. So you have to be very aware of what people are playing in your area in order to adjust your expectations, in order to adjust what it is that you're expecting to play against. And like I said Orcs were popular. They weren't popular at this event, but Tau, they're nearly a full percentage point. Like we're getting two extra Tau players from what we would expect if we were just looking at the global meta. All right, I think that's it. So you got to think about what tests you need to pass. Sometimes they're durability tests. Can we survive their output? Sometimes it's damage tests. Can we do enough damage to them? But just using the Chaos Knight test as an initial way of thinking about your lists is a really good way of building at least well-rounded lists. It's not necessarily going to build you crazy skew lists that are going to win you every game, but if you keep these tests in mind, you should be able to build a list that has a chance of winning every game. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.